tax to GDP ratio in Africa is the lowest in the world at 16%. When you were governor of Lagos, you put a lot of work into doing something there with the local taxes, didn't you? But it's still pitifully low all over Africa.
But today, Lagos State is the 5th largest economy in Africa.
But looking at the I mean, yes, all right, I'll let you brag about Lagos and Nigeria, but you were chair of ECOWAS.
I'm very proud of the legacy I left behind there.
Okay, all right.
And the monitoring there.
You talked about beating your chest, President Tinubu. You've done plenty of that, but you were chair of ECOWAS until last year. So just looking at the region, West Africa, but also the continent as a whole, when we're talking about, mobilizing domestic resources, people don't trust governments, the informal economy is very high, so it makes it much harder to get taxation for the public purse.
Tax reform will have to be written in English language, understandable, and not Japanese in English. A standard that everyone will be able to pay, not for the avoidance, but genuineness of citizenship, right commitment to pay taxes. Write it simple but not stupid. I've reformed that in Nigeria. You can pay your taxes from your telephone. You can assess yourself and you can evaluate yourself so easily from your telephone. It is. What Africa needs is to also put funding in place for research and development. This research and development will get our youths going. They are highly intellectually inquisitive. They will do it. Believe in them.
Yeah, but the budget doesn't go there, does it, into science and R&D? Is it 2%, I think, of African countries' GDP should be paid? Yeah, very low indeed. But when it comes to the private sector, so just looking at the region, West Africa, but also the continent as a whole, when we're talking about, mobilizing domestic resources, people don't trust governments, the informal economy is very high, so it makes it much harder to get taxation for the public purse.
Tax reform will have to be written in English language, understandable, and not Japanese in English. A standard that everyone will be able to pay, not for the avoidance, but genuineness of citizenship, right commitment to pay taxes. Write it simple but not stupid. I've reformed that in Nigeria.
So let's assume that you win a second term. You will be in your most politically potent moment. Clinton did his best work in the first 2 years of his second term. President Obasanjo in Nigeria did a lot of his deep reforms in the first 2 years of his second term. What would you do in the first 2 years of your second term?
Do more work. More challenges are there. Trend. It's difficult, it's painful, but just like the human reproduction process, there's a woman carries the pregnancy, enjoy the pain of labor, and with a very big smile when you see a live child.
The reforms obviously took more than 9 months, and they're still very much underway. But you have some history in taxation. You've done tax reform in Lagos State when you were government there, so you understand how important it is. You like tax so much that your new finance minister is the architect of your recent tax reforms. In fact, he's sitting here in the front row. We had the opportunity to talk a little bit about it yesterday. But the problem about tax is that people become very demanding. Now, my ancestors taxed the Americans, and they ended up throwing all our tea into the sea, which is not how you make a cup of tea. But the point is, the Americans demanded more. And if you start taxing Nigerians, they will start demanding more.
Nobody wants to pay taxes ordinarily. Nobody. Taxation is not friendly to the wealthy, to the middle class, and to the poor. Every human being expects development. But the question they don't answer is, how do you pay for it? You want a very good highway, but you don't want it to go through your land. How do you develop? You want good hospital, well-equipped hospital, and you don't want to pay taxes. How do you care for the vulnerable? And how do you protect the future of the children? How do you even research and develop? Pharmaceutical industry, we remember COVID-19, we remember what happened to the world at large. So in a world that you cannot predict what exactly you must do, you must think from where the source and application of fund should be engineered. Tax is a priority. A citizen that pays taxes is a citizen, whether corporate or individual. If you are not a taxpayer, are not exempted, then you are not a citizen. With the crisis around the world, particularly Iran conflict, Nigeria won't be able to survive with over 200 million people in peace without a refinery. And what a risk taker like a Dangote refinery must be encouraged by the government and power. What I did, support him, give him free trade zone license, support him in the effort to source the crude that is necessary. And today he is the exporter, net exporter of both the PMS, aviation fuel, and other commodities.
Yeah, we heard that he's favouring all the African carriers, Ethiopian Airlines and so on, for the aviation fuel that's in great demand. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But he's producing 650,000 barrels per day, which is only enough for 70% of Nigeria's needs. So he's still a little bit away from being able to export refined oil, petrol to his neighbors.
Yes. And it's been supported. My own formula is, like I said, put your money where your mouth is. When they're about to start a crisis, say, okay, what is the denominated currency in Nigeria? That is Naira. I have crude that you expect me to export in dollar. So I give you, as my local refinery, I give you crude in Naira. No letter of credit, no bank scrambling, and exchange rate instability. solve the problem.
You meant, yeah, the cross-border payments, which means, you know, African countries don't have to convert to USD and so on. So that, you know, very good, the cross-border payments and so on. But just very quickly as an aside, I mean, you know, I think it was you or maybe President Oligi Nguema who mentioned monetary union and how the euro has got the euro. So if Europe's got the euro, when will Africa get the afro?
Nigeria, I'll say, and speaking for Africa, as African champion, putting our spirit behind what we talk about is creating a platform. Look around the entire continent, 54 countries. There's none of us without a particular commodity available in the country or the other. Why not start an exchange commodity platform where we can trade with one another?
Well, why don't you start one?
You say?
Why don't you start the commodity exchange you're talking about? You're the most numerous country, biggest economy, or South Africa, you know, the two of you battle it out at times, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned commodities, and let me bring in President